Here we've got the iLoud sub from IK Multimedia, and for a sub, this is surprisingly small. Just like with their iLoud micro monitors, they seem to have pulled a rabbit out of the hat and defied the laws of physics with the size of this. It's got 6-inch woofers on 3 sides, and on the back we've got all the usual connections. But it's not only a sub, it's a system, because it comes with a reference mic to be used with their ARC-X room correction software, which means you can avoid all the usual problems you can get with subs, because those big, long, powerful bass sound waves have a tendency to create all sorts of issues in most rooms. And you'll have to bear with me for a minute or two while I explain why room correction with subs in particular is so important, because those issues can't really be addressed sometimes without literally changing the shape of your room, so you don't have parallel walls and you have a sloping ceiling, which is why you often see studio designs like this with walls at all sorts of jaunty angles. And I'll show you exactly what I mean with this. This is the room or the system response using the IK Precision 6 monitors without any room correction in there. That's the blue line. And we can see these 3 big peaks at around 39, 69 and 112 Hertz, which are caused by standing waves bringing out the natural room resonances, where the dimensions of the room matches the length of a sound wave that's bouncing back and forth across the parallel walls, length, width and height, by the looks of things at least. And going back to school for a second, back to your physics lessons, we can actually calculate the length of those waves at those frequencies. We use this equation, lambda equals v over f, where v is the velocity of the sound waves in air and f is the frequency of the sound. So for 343 meters per second, which is the speed of sound in air, at 20 degrees C, and at 39 Hertz, we get about 8.8 meters long. And for 69, we get about 5 meters. For 112, we get about 3 meters. And it just so happens that this room is 9 meters wide, it's 5 meters deep and 3 meters high, which shows how you can really exacerbate things by just adding a sub to the system. And that, shows why this is so interesting, because it actually comes with room correction, not just to correct the sub, but to correct the sub and the monitors that you've got, so it corrects the whole system. Using their ARC-X software, we take a few measurements around the listening area. It takes just 6 or 7 minutes. And from that, it calculates the EQ correction needed to flatten that blue curve. And it creates this, the orange curve, which is much flatter. And a couple of years ago, I did double check the ARC-X and the SonarX together. I measured the same monitoring system with both of their processors or both of their software, and they both gave very similar results. So I've got no reason to believe that that orange curve isn't correct, and the blue one wasn't correct either. In fact, if you listen to this mix, you can really hear the honkiness that you get for those 2 little humps that you can see in that blue curve coming out of my Dynaudio LYD7s. And there's no real way to demo it to you, but I'll try using a nice mic. This is the AKG 414B ULS, which is renowned for giving a really flat response from 20 to 20,000 Hertz. But this room is very echoey. It doesn't really make a difference when I'm doing the videos, but when I'm doing something like this, you can really hear the echo in here. And I need to turn it up a little bit so that you can hear the subs coming through. So I've no idea how bad this is gonna sound, but let's have a listen. Listening in the room, the difference is night and day between having the correction in and bypassing it. It's stunningly different. So I'll be interested to see how it sounds when I start editing it with what I've picked up with the mic. But yeah, it really does pull things together. It makes things sound a bit beefier, and it just sort of, everything just sounds much cleaner and crisper, especially in the low end. And I've been demoing a soft synth this week and been playing with the filters on that, and I can really feel as it drops down below 50 Hertz, which you couldn't do without this. And I think this is really helping. That's the crossover frequency, where it's taking the bass duties off the left and right speakers, so anything under 80 Hz is being sent to the subs, not to the main speakers. And I had noticed with both the LYD7s, or the LYD7s, and the Precision 6s, that you can hear a bit of buzziness happening in the low end when I'm doing something like a filter sweep. So listening to a really pure tone low, the woofers on both of those sets would have difficulty with that, and that's been taken off them using this, so it sounds a lot crisper and cleaner. However, if you do turn it up loud and then you isolate this, you can hear this buzzing as well. I suspect that's the same with any sub, but if you crank everything up, it sounds really loud in the room. Turn off the left and right speakers, you do hear a bit of that sort of vuv, vuv, vuv from this, which you don't get when it's at lower SPLs, but I'm talking loud there, and you can't actually hear it once the speakers come in, but just so you're aware. But I do think most subs do that when you crank them up. So yeah, I've been testing it with these, the IK Precision 6 and the Dynaudio LYD7s. The Precision 6s work with the ArcX software as well, so you can do the room correction with those, but you can't with the LYD7s, which is why I upgraded to the Precision 6s. The Dynaudios are around £900 for a pair, and the Precision 6s are about £700 each, so they are a fair amount more, which is interesting actually, because if this had been on the market 6 months ago, I may not have upgraded to the Precision 6s, because it then have the room correction with the sub for the LYD7. So my upgrade would have cost me £600. As it is, it's cost a fair amount more, but I suppose I've got 2 sets of speakers now, haven't I? But yeah, the difference between the Dynaudio LYD7s and the Precision 6s is massively reduced. Now I've got the sub. And at about £600, as I say, it's not cheap, but it's cheaper than buying a much larger pair of monitors plus the room correction. So in summary, this is a great upgrade for a system that you've got with sort of small to mid-range monitors that you might want to upgrade. You might want to get some more volume from them and a little bit more bass, and also correct your room. So without having to buy an additional room correction system, you get the sub and you've almost like upgraded your monitors. Of course, you're not going to change all the specs of your monitors. You're not going to change the distortion specs or the time reference specs on them, that sort of thing. But you do get, for £600, you get a massive upgrade in your sound. I wouldn't say it was necessarily worth it if you've got things like I've got in the studio, which are the KH310s from Neumann. They're about £3,500 a pair, and they go down to 30 Hertz. This goes down to 20. I wouldn't think I'd make it, well, it doesn't make much of a difference introducing this to that system, but you wouldn't think it would. I think this is really aimed at smaller studios, smaller rooms with medium sized or small speakers. With those, you'll really, really hear a difference, and especially, as I say, with the room correction. Here's something I've just noticed while I've been editing, and I have dinted this. In over 40 years of playing music, I've never ever damaged a speaker cone before, but obviously this sits on the floor, and I remember kicking my legs out, stretching my legs, and thudding it, and I didn't realise I've actually damaged it. Hasn't made a difference to the tone on it, but just to be aware, when you do have a sub, be careful, because you can kick them, because you do put them on the floor. So I hope that was of some use to somebody somewhere. If it was, please do subscribe, ring the bell, join me over on Patreon, do all that sort of stuff. I've got patches, samples, tutorials, and other little bits and bobs in there. Also, do take a look at my startycar.com website. Again, patches, samples, stuff you can download, stuff for free, cheap stuff and more expensive stuff. Always nice when people pick up even just the cheap little sample packs, because as I always say, it does help to support the channel. So thanks for staying to the very end. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time.